Hello everyone, I'm Arunima from Knit-A-Knotter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Mehr shawl. This shawl is made up of, well, the one that I made is made with the Scheepjes, I think that's how you say this, Stardust shawl. It is listed as a DK weight, but it really doesn't work up like that. It works up more like a fingering weight yarn, and it has a little bit of mohair in this, so it was perfect for me to make the lacy shawl that Mehr is. And this is the leftover from I used 2 skeins, and this is the leftover from the second skein. I think it is the colorway Virgo, and so the pattern is a 4-row repeat, so you can technically stop wherever you want, and you can even use any weight yarn for this. So you could use a worsted weight, or you could use a DK weight, or you could use fingering weight with an appropriate hook, and because it's a 4-row repeat, you can stop wherever you want to. I actually have some testers who made it in heavier weight yarn, and it worked out really great for them. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to use this Scheepjes Verlet that I have. This is another yarn. This is a yarn that you can use instead of the one that I did. Again, one of my testers used a whirl instead of a verlet, and that's the same yarn, and it worked out great for them. You're welcome to check out my Ravelry design, and you should be able to find a few options in the projects, the ones that my testers made. So I'll get started with this one. So I'm going to now go over directly to the pattern. So for this video, I'm going to follow the chart, but the instructions should match exactly with the written instructions if that's what you're following. So let's get started. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to start with a chain 3. So in this pattern, a chain 4. In this pattern, the chain 3 at the beginning of a row always counts as a DC. So this is technically a chain 1 and 1 DC. So for row 1, I'm going to make 6 DCs in this first chain over here. So this is the four chains. I'm going to make 6 DCs in this first chain. And I'm using a 3.75 millimeter hook with this. That's the same one I used with the Stardust yarn, and you can choose whichever size hook you want. It won't really matter as far as the pattern goes. So I'm going to make, I like to pick up 2 of these loops here, and I'm going to make 6 DC. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is effectively 7 DCs, because as I said, the first 3 chains count as a double crochet. So now for the next row, I'm going to turn and I'm going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is the first 3 count as a DC, and the next 3 make the chain 3 space. And I'm going to now double crochet in the 4th DC. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is technically the center most DC. That's 7 DCs. So there are 3 on the right and 3 on the left. So I'm going to double crochet in the 4th. And then chain 3. And then DC in the last DC, which is, because there was a chain 3 at the beginning, I'm going to make a DC in the 3rd chain of that chain 3. So it's a little hard to see, but you'll be able to figure out where that 3rd chain is. And that is how it's looking at the end of row 2. So now row 3. Row 3 starts with a chain 9. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, again that's a 3 DCs in the, sorry, the 3 chains in the beginning count as a DC, and the rest of the chains make a chain space. So the next stitch is a single crochet, which will go in that last chain from that previous chain space. So you could technically make this stitch in the chain space, and that should work out fine. I have seen that with the Stardust yarn it wasn't turning out very well, because I think because that's because of the mohair, there's a little bit of fuzziness, so the design didn't come out really nice. So I had to make a lot of my stitches in the chains instead of the chain space. But if you're using something like a whirl or a whirlet, or maybe the Lion Brand Mandala yarn, then you can just crochet in the chain space. So for this for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to make those stitches in the chains as mentioned in the pattern. So I'm going to go here and make a single crochet, and then a chain 1, and then similarly on the other side I have to make a single crochet here. You could do it in the chain space, but I'm going to make it in the chain. And then chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now this was a chain 6 in the last row, so I have to find the third one. So that's 1, 2, 3. That is where I'm going to make my DC. So the setup is a little hard. The first few rows, it takes some time to get used to the pattern, but once you have these, it should be very easy to make. So this is the end of row 3. Now row 4, it starts with a chain 3. That's going to count as 1 DC, and then I'm going to make another DC in that same chain. So that's 1 more DC, and then I'm going to make 3 DCs in the next 3 chains. So 1, 2, and 3. So you could also make these 3 in the chain space here, but I prefer to make them in the chain. It gives a more clear pattern. So that's 3, and then now chain 3, and for the next one there is a DC in the next chain space. So I'm going to, for here it doesn't matter too much, so I'm just going to go ahead and make that double crochet in that chain space here, that chain 1 space from the previous row. So that is 1 double crochet and then 3 chains. Now this one is a little tricky. I need to make 3 double crochets in the fourth, starting from the 4th chain. So this first chain gets a little lost, you should remember that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th chain. I'm going to make a double crochet here. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And I like to pick up 2 loops just so it's a sturdy stitch, but you could pick up 1 if that's what you like. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then 2 DC in the next one. So this next chain, that counts, that's the 3rd chain of that chain space, and that counts as a DC, so that would be the top of the DC. So that's how it's looking. So this flower, you can see that there's a little flower pattern that already developed here. So I'm going to now go ahead and make row 5. So for row 5, start with a chain 3. That is again the first chain 3 counts as a DC, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 DCs in the same DC. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and single crochet in the second DC from here, from the chain space. So 1, 2, that is the second one here. So single crochet there, chain 1, and then single crochet in the first chain. So that creates a little chain space for the next row. Then 5 double crochets in the next double crochet. So this is the next DC, so I'm going to make 5 double crochets here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 single crochet in the last chain here, chain 1, and 1 single crochet in the next, skip 1 DC and then 1 single crochet in this next DC, and then I make 6 double crochets in the last DC. So again here the last DC was a chain 3 from the previous row, so I'm going in the third chain and I'm going to make 6 double crochets there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the end of row 5. You can see that flower pattern very clearly now. Now on to row 6. So I'm going to make chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first 3 chains are a DC. That'll count as a DC. Now skip, so this was 6 DC over here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a DC in the fourth from the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This one here. And then chain 3. And 1 DC in the chain space. So this is that 1 chain space here. That sits right above that last DC over here. So I find that making this pattern with the chart is much easier because I can see exactly where I am in the pattern and I just have to mimic what's on the chart. But so this is a great pattern for you if you want to learn how to use charts. If you are a visual person like me, that'll be very, very useful, but the written instructions match this exactly, so that should be fine too. 1, 2, 3 chain now. Oh, I'm sorry. So I made that 1 DC in that chain space, and now there's 1 DC in the next single crochet here, and then 1 DC in each of the next 5 DCs. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 DC in the next chain space, and then 1 DC in the next single crochet, 1 DC in the next single crochet, and then 1 DC in the next chain space. So this is a very repetitive pattern and it's symmetrical on the left and right, so you can sort of get a sense of how many stitches you'd have to make and where you'd make them because they're a mirror image from the center. I have to make 3 chains, so 1, 2, 3, and then I have to make a DC. I have to skip 2 DC and make a DC in the third, and then 3 chains, and then 1 DC in the last DC, which would be the third chain from the previous row. So that's end of row 6. Until you complete that 4 row repeat, you don't really see these flowers. So that is why whenever you're making your shawl, I recommend stopping at either after completing all the 4-row repeat, or after completing that first row, which gives you a little ruffle. I'll show you next time when I'm onto that first row of the next repeat. So here, this was the end of row 6. Now row 7 is, so if you see that the little bit of repeat pattern has already started. So row 7 is very similar to row 3. You start with a chain 9, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and then make a single crochet in the chain right before the DC. It's a little hard to find these, so it slows you down. So if you're using some yarn that is not fuzzy, then it might be easier to just make these in the chain spaces instead. And then chain 1, and then a single crochet in the next one here, and then chain 5, 1 2 3 4 5, and a single crochet in the 1 2 3 4 5th in the 4th DC. So 1 2 3 4th DC here, and then chain, and then single crochet in, skip 1 DC and in the next one, and then chain 5, 1 2 3 4 5, and then a single crochet in the chain before this DC, chain 1, skip that DC, and a single crochet in the next chain. So I'm just showing this to you again. It's very hard to find that first chain right after the DC because it sort of becomes tight, but if you look hard, then you can find it easily. And make a single crochet there, and then chain 6, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and a DC in the last DC, which is the 3rd chain over here, 1 2 3. So that's the one. So there it is. So this next set of flowers is starting to show up, and row 8 is very similar to row 4. So again, you can start seeing a repeat pattern. So there's a chain 3, and you make a DC in that same stitch, and then a DC in the next 3, 1 2 3, and then chain 3, and then a DC in the next chain space here, and then chain 3, and then a double crochet in each of the last 3 chains here. So that's 1 2 and 3, and then a DC in the single crochet from the previous row. So that's the 1, and then a DC in the next chain space, a DC in the next single crochet, and 3 DCs in the next 3 chains. So you can see this one's a little tight, so it's hard to see, but it's right there. So I'm going to make a DC here. So 1 2 3, and then chain 3, and DC in the next chain space here. So it's very easy to see where the spaces are because the stitches are very clearly defined, and there's a lot of space, there are a lot of chain spaces, so it's very easy to find that one chain 1 space that lies between these 2 large chain spaces. So that's that 1 DC over there, and then chain 3, and then DC in the fourth chain. So 1 2 3 4, and then DC in the next 2. So 1 and 2, and then 2 DC in the next, which would be the top of the last DC, which is the third chain, because it's a chain 3 from the previous row. It's the third chain from the bottom. So 1 and 2. So here, that completes 8 rows, and you can keep working on the pattern just as we were doing right now. Portions of this what we've already made come in the make up repeat parts of the next rows, and if you look at the pattern chart, I've marked the repeat parts in red. Or if you want, you can read the written instructions, and the written instructions have the repeat sections clearly marked. So you can continue to make this, and I really like how this is looking in this color as well. So if you make one more row, you'll see that a little ruffle forms over here, and you could either stop there or you could stop on this row. This is the end of the 4th row of a single set. So that completes these flowers. If you stopped before this, then that would not, but it's okay to make one more row. So if you have enough yarn to make 4 more, that's good. But if you have just enough to make one more, you can make another row and then stop at that point. So if you could just keep going with this pattern, keep making it until you get the size that you want, or you can stop when you run out of yarn. So this will just keep adding one more flower on each row, and that's pretty much it for this pattern. If you have any questions or if you'd like any help with it, feel free to reach out to me and I will be happy to help. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my other videos. Bye bye.